for us to be spending this evening with you. February is a very short month, and I can't believe, as Paul is telling us, we are 1 week away from month end. I want to start by wishing you a very good month end. Stretch yourself in these last days, as we used to say when we were in school. A minute can save a student. So we should work to the last minute, do our best, and not give up until the very last moment. We will achieve what we have set our goals for. So let's give it our best. So as your invite might have told you, today the products that I wanted to speak about are those that we use in supporting our clients or our people who have been diagnosed with cancer. But as I was preparing for the talk, I was thinking about the best way that I understand what cancer means. Many times when we get the diagnosis of cancer, it strikes fear in our hearts, and we don't even seek to think or understand, because we know that it is something very serious. So I wanted to just share what I've come to understand from reading and from listening to people who know more about it, how we can describe what happens in cancer. So the thing is that any cell in our body, any living cell, has got the capacity to become cancerous. It's as if we are born with seeds in our cells that can become cancer. The only thing, and the good news, is that the seed does not mean that the cancer will come. It just means that it can come. What is in our power is to create an environment which is not conducive to the seeds of cancer actually becoming cancer in us. So the thing is that even though the capacity to grow cancerous is there, it's like a loaded gun. Before we pull the trigger, the gun is harmless. So our angle of attack should actually be that, to avoid the things that act as triggers for the beginning of the seeds of cancer to grow in us. So some of the triggers are what we refer to as carcinogens. For example, we know that nicotine that is found in tobacco smoking. We know that some viruses, we know that certain chemicals that are used in processing or in different kinds of industries. We know that radiation are all things that can be called carcinogens, and they are called that because they act as triggers that set off the process of a cancer growth. So the way that I understand, according to the material I was reading, is that these triggers don't happen just once. It doesn't mean that the moment you come into contact with a trigger, then you have cancer growing. Actually, the triggers should be chronic. So for example, by smoking a cigarette once, in most cases, of course, I wouldn't say never, but in most cases, it's lengthy periods of smoking end up in cancer, and not in everybody, as we know. So the trigger has to be chronic. And the reason why the trigger has to be chronic is that the chronic triggers cause the cells to get damaged. And when they are damaged, it causes what we call oxidative stress. And the oxidative stress produces certain chemicals in the body which go on to damage our DNA. Once that damage has taken place, the cell then, it's as if it breaks away from the control of our systems and starts becoming a rogue cell in our bodies. And then it starts multiplying uncontrollably. So it's no longer listening to the cues of the body that tells it you should be like this, or you should multiply at this rate. It just starts doing its own thing. And that is when it grows and grows and multiplies, and we say that you have a tumor or you have cancer. So just to encourage ourselves that, of course, this is a frightening and terrible illness. And I think in the US, it's now the #2 killer of Americans. I don't know what the stats are here in Africa, but I know that, for example, in Kenya, there has been growing concern, and probably everywhere, there has been growing concern about the increasing frequency of cancer diagnosis among us. And this is especially sad because I was just reading that researchers in the 1950s actually thought that Africans were immune to most cancers because it was a very rare thing to come across cancer. And if you think the 1950s is not that long ago, it's just maybe less than 15 years before I was born, more or less. So it's not longer. Imagine if within maybe people a little older than me in their lifetime, cancer had been so rare that Africans were thought to be immune to them. It means that something has changed and that we can actually try to go back to a time when this was not such a common illness among us. So hopefully my introduction there has helped to explain to you my understanding of how this happens, that we have a loaded gun, but it is harmless unless we pull the trigger. So our part as distributors and as people who seek to know more about health is to find and understand how to prevent the trigger from being pulled, so that even though we have that capacity to have cancer growths in our bodies, we create a situation in which that does not happen. And we also explain to those in our circle of influence what they can do. So for that reason, the first part that I wanted to go into is to explain that for this reason, doing things to prevent cancer is very important because, of course, once we have the diagnosis, first of all, we get very frightened and very downcast. And already that is going to make things a bad situation worse just by the effect that diagnosis is going to have on us. So for that reason, I really would like us to emphasize very much, not so much about which products we can give to those who already have been diagnosed, but about the steps we can take to reverse this trend and go back to what our ancestors or our fathers and forefathers had, which is that cancer was such a rare thing that we were thought to be immune to it. So the first thing that we can speak about is to avoid the obvious triggers. So for example, we know that cigarette smoking is something that we should now give up. There are people we know that smoke all their lives and never get cancer. We also know that there are people who never smoke and get lung cancer. But rather than going to find out which group we fall amongst, we should, those things which have already been established to be cancerous, that is in our power to avoid, we should avoid. So one of them, as I said, is nicotine. And also another thing that is closely associated with cancer is this unhealthy diet. Because you have heard me say, I think almost every time that I'm speaking about nutrition, I'm also speaking about the dangers of having too much sugar and processed food in your diet. This is another one which leads to many illnesses like diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular illnesses, as well as cancer. So we need to look at our diet and we need to see how much we can eliminate those things in our diet that are not conducive to our good health. Because this is really still within our power, especially in Africa, where our traditional foods are still not far from us. I think those of our guests today who are living in the developed world, you know that it is so much harder to get our traditional foods. But for those of us who are living in Africa, it's still not that difficult. Is that we have acquired this habit of thinking that it's better to eat the Western style of food. But as I really have been emphasizing and will continue to emphasize, our traditional foods were health-giving and they are nutritious, and we can prepare them in a way that they're a pleasure for us to eat, as well as to help us sustain our health. So that is the diet. There are also certain pollutants. So we spoke when we were at the beginning of the year when we talked about home care, why the home care range from Neolife is an important addition to the products that we use and that we sell to our client, because some of these pollutants are in the home care products that we buy in the shop. And that is another selling point that we can bring to the attention of our customers, that pollutants are not just smoke produced in factories or things out there. They can be things that are out there that we buy and we bring into our home, including things like perfumes and all these perfumed things that we buy and put in our houses so that our house smells a certain way. It's better to use care to spray in the air in your house to kill the germs. And then even though your house is not smelling like perfume, it's smelling fresh. As long as you open the windows and the house is clean, it's going to be smelling nice. It doesn't have to smell of perfume, because we know that some of those perfumes are made from chemicals that actually are carcinogenic. We know that some of the skincare products that we use are also culprits in that problem. So to avoid all triggers where possible. And then the next thing is, as much as possible, to eat a healthy diet. As I've said, our traditional foods, good proteins. So for example, where we have the option between farmed fish and wild fish, it's better to opt for wild fish, because of the foods that are given to the farmed fish have been found to be problematic. If you have a choice between the traditional chicken, the African style of chicken, as opposed to the modern types, then opt for the kienyeji chicken, as we call it in East Africa, as well as any meats that are homegrown and you understand how the animals are kept. These are always our first choice. So good quality proteins is a good place to start. Good quality carbohydrates. So we have very many different types of tubers that form our traditional foods. We should opt for this as our sources of carbohydrates. Then other things like legumes, for example, the pojos and the different types of beans and the different types of leguminous crop foods that we have, we can use those. And of course, good healthy fats. So for example, things from avocado, things like ghee, olive oil, coconut oil. These are oils that are created naturally and not factory based. So to look at our diet and see where we can change for the better. And then, of course, Neolife, as always, as a result of many years of good research, we can help in prevention as well as supporting those people who have been diagnosed. So, of course, our best supplement that is for cancer support is Phytodefense, which is a powerhouse of plant-based antioxidants. We know that there are 3 of them: carotenoid complex, flavonoid complex, as well as cruciferous plus. They are concentrated preparations of plant-based antioxidants which attack the problem of cancer from different angles. From the angle of neutralizing the triggers, because we've seen that triggers are what set off the process of cancer formation. They also work on the side of neutralizing the byproducts of oxidative stress. That is why we call them antioxidants, because they get rid of those byproducts of oxidative stress. And then they also help our body to fight our immune system to fight any cell that is showing signs of going rogue. So the Phytodefense is a preparation of a wide range of fruits and vegetables which have been researched and found to play an important role in helping our body to be unfriendly and inhospitable to the growth of cancer. So it is as if we have the seed of cancer, but our body becomes a garden in which cancer cannot grow, because the Phytodefense and our nutritional habits have made it inhospitable to the growth of cancer. Then once cancer has been diagnosed, of course, we know that it's not a sure thing, and sometimes it may still happen, but we go on to support ourselves and our clients and our people in terms of helping them to get a good source of proteins. And when they are sick, it might be difficult, especially if they have got sores in their mouths. Then we recommend NutriShake or Neolife Shake, which helps them to get a good protein source. And then, because we know chemotherapy kills the cancer as well as the normal cells, it's just set to kill everything in its way that is in the area where the cancer is. So they will need a protein in order to rebuild the tissue that has been destroyed. And so NutriShake plays an important role. We also find that during chemotherapy, Aloe Vera Plus is very useful because it reduces the nausea, and it helps also to reduce the stress and calm the person down. And then, of course, during chemotherapy, we don't recommend Betagard, but once chemotherapy is over, we really recommend Betagard to help the body to detoxify from the chemo drugs, as well as Calmac to help to repair especially if there has been nerve damage, because that is another thing that happens when one is receiving treatment for cancer, that some of the tissue that is damaged is the nerves. And so Calmac will play a role there. And of course, we also add phytodefense to help the body to return to better health. So after the treatment, we really emphasize to continue encouraging people to opt for those lifestyle habits that are going to support the continuing good health. Because as I said, sometimes a person becomes very hopeless as a result of this illness. We need to keep on encouraging them that there is something within their power to do, and it is not entirely hopeless. And an important aspect of that is educating them on the part that they can play. That is to avoid the triggers and to support their good health by using our supplements. So once again, just to repeat there that we have NutriShake or Neolife Shake, depending on what you have in your market, Aloe Vera Plus, and then we have Betagard for detox once chemo is over. And then phytodefense is ongoing, either as a way of prevention or as a way of supporting the body throughout the process. So also, just as a final note on that, if you have got a client or a person who is undergoing chemotherapy or who has had this diagnosis, emotional support plays a very important role, because as we know, it is a very frightening and concerning thing when one receives this diagnosis. So it's good to show that we care, because as distributors, we cannot distance ourselves from the fate of our customers, because we do care about them, and we want them to know that not only are we distributing products, but we also want to improve their life in any way that we can. So to visit them, to maybe educate and to encourage, all play a part in being a good Neolife distributor when we are dealing with an illness that is this serious, and to try not to only, to help the people not to think we are just trying to sell them products, but to help them to understand that we do care about bringing them back to good health. Then I wanted to move to some of the questions that I received. I've been a bit lagging behind with the questions, so I'll have a few minutes. So I received a question about Candida, which is the yeast infection that tends to come about. You notice it quite often in expectant mothers, but as well in other people. And it means that as a result of our internal environment, certain unfriendly fungal growths are beginning to get the upper hand. And the best product for this will usually be Acidophilus. And I know, I always speak about Acidophilus, and it's not available in the East African market. But I do still need to tell you that Acidophilus is an outstanding product if someone has got Candida. But if you do not have Acidophilus, the other thing I normally recommend is fiber tablets, because fiber is what feeds the friendly microbes, including Acidophilus, which is in our gut. And so if you do not have Acidophilus, then next best is the fiber tablets, in order to help the microbes, the few that we have, to multiply and increase, and they are the ones which are going to control the fungal growth internally. So they'll return the system to normal, which means that the fungus that are causing us problems will actually be eliminated by our friendly gut bacteria. That is actually the way they repair us, for feeding them with a healthy diet. And you remember I told you, and I actually didn't mention it when I was speaking about cancer, cancer cells love sugar. And all sicknesses seem to do better with sugar. So if you can at all eliminate sugar from your diet, or minimize it, and minimize the foods which quickly turn into sugar, like refined wheat flour and refined things like sweets and cakes and biscuits and all that, if you can keep them as an absolute minimum and only use them maybe once in a while as a part of maybe a treat or a celebration, then it's going to also help with things like Candida, and also be a part of protecting ourselves from our body becoming friendly to the growth of cancer. So acidophilus, fiber tablets where acidophilus is not available. Garlic is another one that helps with Candida, because garlic fights against some of these unfriendly fungus. And also, because this tends to be a problem that is more common in women, and it can be as a result of hormonal imbalance, we also recommend, if it is a woman, we recommend Herbal Feminine Complex. So on a personal lifestyle side, eliminate sugar, refined carbohydrates, and all junk food, as well as if it is a lady, do not use harsh soaps or antiseptic to clean the private parts of the body if that is where the Candida is showing itself, because it will worsen the irritation and continue the cycle of the Candida problem. So rather to just use warm water without any harsh soaps. The next question I got was for someone who was asking about a stroke. And for a stroke, as we know, this is related to what we spoke about last time, which is the cardiovascular health. And the products that we recommend for that is lipotropic adjunct, which help, and omega-3 salmon oil, as well as garlic and coenzyme Q10 for those who have it in their market. Here in South Africa, we don't have it. And so if you have it, then coenzyme Q10. If you don't have it, then we have garlic, omega-3 salmon oil, as well as lipotropic adjunct. These attack the problem from different angles, such as making sure that our blood is of good quality, making sure that our blood vessels are clean and clear, and also making sure that our heart muscles are working well. So on a personal side, once again with the stroke, we recommend that they clean up the diet, remove the problem foods, as well as increase activity in their lifestyle. And then I think the last one, because my time is running out, is lupus. Someone asked about lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. And as we saw with the autoimmune diseases, it's our body attacking itself. And the first place to go into action is to remove all triggers. Triggers are usually these problem foods that I'm always talking about. And with the people who the lupus affects the skin, then they may need to avoid excessive sunshine, because it might trigger off a lupus attack. But from the product side, we recommend for them ProVitality, BetaGuard, and zinc, which help from different angles, such as reducing inflammation, detoxifying, as well as with zinc in healing of any internal damage that is being done by the lupus as an autoimmune disease. I think I shall hand you over there, because my time is up. And I just want to once again wish you a very good effort and good results from the work that you're going to do in the next 1 week as we approach month end. I wish you all the best. And as you know, we always rejoice in your success. And so we wish you all the best. And you know that your success is our success. And that is why we are so very much invested in your doing well and getting the results that you hope for. Because also we know as we get those results, we are also making the world a healthier and happier place. So we win all round. And so as I say goodbye to you this evening, I still want to encourage you, if you have any question, feel free to send it to me, especially if it's urgent and you would want an answer before next Thursday. But otherwise, here is Pascal ready to take it away. And thank you very much for letting me speak to you this evening.
Thank you very